Can you introduce us to who exactly you are?
Sure. My name is Jen Shear. I'm the cantor at Temple Bethesda. This is my 38th year of being the cantor at Temple Bethesda. I would never admit that I was under, over 2 years old when we started. It's cantors in the book of clergy that mostly sings, but also does a lot of clerical responsibilities like married people, perform funerals and weddings and other life cycle events, babies and mitzvahs and things like that.
What exactly made you want to start being a cantor?
That's a great question. As we were just talking about, I went on an Israel program in high school in Israel, which changed my whole life. I just connected so deeply with Israel and the history of Israel, and was so amazed by everything that Israel had done, and I felt so embraced by the people, and I really felt like for some unexplainable reason, because I didn't speak the language very well, and it was not my home, it was halfway across the world, and the culture was different and all that, but I felt somehow like it was home. And ever since then, so there was a rabbi who was in charge of our program, the high school in Israel, who developed it. And this was back in the 70s. And there was only, I believe there was just one female cantor at the time in the United States. And he said to me, because he would love to say what it seemed like any opportunity on the bus and on top of mountains and all kinds of crazy things. And so he said to me, Becky, do you know that you could mix your love for Judaism with your love for music, and you could be maybe the second female cantor, who knows? And I had no idea there was such a thing. And so it just opened up this whole possibility for me.
What does the Torah say regarding women in faith? And what are the roles of women in Judaism?
Wow, those are loaded questions. The Torah says a lot about it. And then there's a lot about what has been said. Okay, so there's the Torah, the 5 books of Moses that Moses was, the story says, given on Mount Sinai by God. Then there's all the books that the rabbis have written since then on the commentary on the Torah, and commentaries on the commentaries on the Torah. And they'll take like one sentence and say, well, because it's, for instance, in the mailing, from the family, from the work, we got the whole idea of the whole ceremony that I'm doing from one sentence in the Torah that says that Jacob set up a special monument for his wife on her grave. And we took that and made this whole, so in other words, you can say it's so highly interpreted and sometimes misinterpreted. So it was written by probably many different people in a long period of time, and nobody knows exactly who. And those days, it was a very patriarchal society. So it was written for a culture that was run by men, and women had the roles of raising children. So the Torah really doesn't distinguish as far as your questions about faith. That's equal among human beings, no matter what body parts they have. But their responsibilities, for instance, only a man in that society could be they call them priests back then, but they were not called rabbis. There was a high priest, there was a big temple in Jerusalem that only women could do certain things, and he was in charge of the tribe, and then in charge of the family, and it was definitely, and another time period. Luckily, Judaism, especially Reform Judaism, which I'm sure we'll talk about later, has changed with the times in a lot of ways. Sacrifice animals and neither, so it changed. And what was the second part?
The second part was, what are the roles for women in Judaism
Today.
today?
So there's three main branches of Judaism. There's more, but the main ones are Reform, Conservative, and Orthodox. Reform is like on the far left, the most, I guess, progressive. That's what we are. That's why there's a female cantor here. There are also female rabbis in Reform Judaism. Basically, we are very liberal. Then change at the times the most of all the three branches. Then let's go to then there's Orthodox on the extreme right. It's very it's very law-based and they stick to the letter of the law. And women don't have a huge role, honestly, in Orthodox Judaism. But I see they would see it differently, to be totally fair, because I've had this discussion with many Orthodox person, and their view is that women are naturally already more intuitive and more attuned to spiritual things, so we don't have to go to temple and we can stay home and cook, so the men can go to temple. So that's their line. And then in the middle of those two is conservative, which is just what you could probably guess, kind of spanning both of them, and depending on the person or the synagogue, they could be leaning a little bit more towards the left or a little bit more towards the right. I was raised conservative, but found it no problem to move to Reform. So the role of women is completely different in each of those. In conservative, they're just now starting to ordain female cantors and rabbis, but they're restricting things they can't do. And they can't do like they can't marry people, and they can't perform different things that we can do in Reform Judaism. So there's a saying, 2 Jews, 3 views, and it really depends on who you ask. It's very, very dependent on which branch you resonate with.
To better understand the role of women in Buddhism, we attended a service at the Kadamta Meditation Center in Fort Lauderdale. The service was not recorded as we sought to respect everyone's privacy. However, we got to talk with the resident teacher, Gen Kelsang Norbu, who taught us about women in Buddhism.
My name is Kelsang Norbu, and I've been a monk for 10.5 years.
What does Buddha say regarding women in the faith?
Well, Buddhism in general, unfortunately, has not always been a model of equality between men and women. This particular tradition of Buddhism, however, is completely equal in terms of men and women, so there's no difference. That's Buddha's intention.
So what are the roles of women in Buddhism?
The same as the role of men, no different.
So there's nothing different?
No difference. In this tradition, no difference.
What do you mean by this tradition?
Buddhism is very diverse, so there are many different traditions, and you might read, for example, of cultures where the role of women is different, but in this particular, when I say tradition, I mean like a branch or a school of Buddhism. The one that I practice and teach is completely equal.
Has the role evolved or changed over time because there are more opportunities to participate in the faith, or has it always been the same level ground?
Yeah, I think that it has definitely evolved over time because in a lot of Eastern cultures, which is where Buddhism came from, um, there wasn't cultural equality between men and women, and so that kind of seeped into the religion, even though it wasn't Buddha's original intention. And so, in many of those cultures, you would see the nuns not having the same opportunities as the monks, or in some cases, there wouldn't be any nuns at all. And like lay women also wouldn't have the same opportunities even as laymen. So that's something historically and even now that is the case some places, but unfortunately it's evolved as Buddhism has modernized, at least in this particular way of practicing.
What does Buddha exactly say regarding women in the faith?
I don't know that he really commented on it. One of the things in Buddhism is what we call equanimity, which means that we train our mind to feel equally warm and friendly towards everyone. So I know in other faiths there's a lot of discussion about this topic, but we don't particularly need it because we don't see any reason for inequality to begin with. So why would it have to be a discussion? Let's get on with the practice of the faith. But I will tell you a story. You may have noticed on our shrine we have representations of both male and female deities, different enlightened beings, some who have male forms, some who have female forms. One of the most well-known female Buddhas is Tara, and today just happens to be Tara Day. It's December 8th, but the 8th of every month we actually celebrate Tara Day. And one story about Tara, in a previous life she was a princess who was a very sincere and pure practitioner, and on one occasion she performed some really great deeds, and there was a kind of arrogant monk who went up to her afterwards and said, you've done wonderful things today, you should pray in a future life to be reborn in a male form, in a male body, so that you can follow the path and attain complete enlightenment. And she didn't get angry or upset. She just basically said quietly that in ultimate truth there is no male, there is no female, that these labels are merely imputed by convention, and that she liked having a female body, and that in all of her future lives she was going to take a female form, and she was going to attain enlightenment as a woman. So then later she became a Buddha by the name of Tara.
Imagine a woman walking down the street wearing a hijab. What are the first three things that come to your mind? For me, they are Muslim, women, and pride. However, before we started doing this project, it used to be Muslim, women, and oppressed. My initial thoughts were formed on sole misconceptions rather than true understanding of the Islamic faith and the role of women in Islam. In Islam, women are seen as nurturers and caretakers within the family and in the faith, primarily caretakers. The Prophet Muhammad told us in the Quran that heaven lies under the feet of its mothers to show just how important women were in Islam. According to the Quran, women are the pillars of Islam. We went to the Islamic Center of South Florida and sat down with the executive director, Nihad Sakala, to learn more about the roles of women in Muslim society and in the Islamic faith, and to discuss the misconceptions surrounding women in Islam. My first question is, what does the Quran say regarding women in Islam in the faith? Like, what are the roles in women in Islam?
Well, to dignify or to show the dignity of women, one of the ways, God has a whole chapter in the Quran called Women, Surat An-Nisa. There are various verses in the Quran and also various authentic narrations by the Prophet that talks about the women and how dignified they are and the importance that they play in the role that they play in society. Women in Islam wouldn't be much different than women in any other civilized nation. What I believe is that any woman who aspires to become equal to a man is actually degrading herself.
Why do you say that?
Because mothers are the ones who bring out nations. They are the ones who raise and upbring nations. If mothers play their role as, I don't want to say only as mothers, but primarily that's what mothers play the roles as mothers. They're the ones who educate their children even before they go to school. Children, so pretty much they play a more important role in society than men do.
So I have read a lot of misconceptions regarding women in Islam, such as they are forced to wear the hijab and cover their heads, and that people think that they're oppressed. Do you have anything to say in regards to that?
Women, it's for their protection, it's for their sanctity, it's for their dignity, because it's just like something that you really have dear to your heart. For example, somebody who has a very, very precious stone, where do you think they would keep it?
In a safe.
Safety deposit box, in a bank, locked up, and only two people with two different keys and combinations and what have you get to it. It's because it's very precious. Something that is very, I don't want to go as far as saying sacred, but the woman, she is sacred, not the gemstone or the diamond, but it's the value that you hold for women that want you to keep them safeguarded and protected and what have you. Now, are they oppressed? No, they're not oppressed. I mean, this is part of the religion, and if you believe in Islam, you want to become a Muslim, or you were born a Muslim and you want to be a Muslim and live like a Muslim, this is part of Islam. It's not something that a minister or an imam or the Prophet himself ordained or ordered the women to do. It's God, and it's in the Quran, very clearly spelled out. My wife, she covers, she wears a hijab, and she has been asked once, isn't it very hot to dress this way in Florida? Her reply was, well, according to my belief, hellfire is much hotter, so I prefer to, withstand this. And again, it's dignifying for women to cover what is precious to them.
So the Prophet Muhammad once said that heaven lies under the feet of mothers, to show just how important he believed that women were. So how do you think that the importance of women is showcased in Islam? What are your personal views on how Islam shows that mothers and wives are important to its fate?
The importance of the mother is higher than the importance of the father in Islam. Not to say that the father is not important. There's another hadith or authentic narration about the Prophet when a man approached him and he asked him, who is the most deserving person of my companionship? And the Prophet said, your mother. The man asked, then who? All right, now I know it's my mother who's the most deserving. Then who? Then the Prophet repeated, your mother. The guy said, okay, well, then who? The Prophet replied, your mother. Then who? Then your father. The mother, I mean, you were probably, what, in high school?
Yes.
Maybe you should sit down with your mother one day and ask her about what she went through from the day that she found out that she was pregnant with you until now. I don't know who can rightfully reward the mother other than God, quite honestly. And the value of women in general, and in particular the mothers, is very high in Islam. Islam wants everyone to understand the value and realize the value of the mothers so they can be treated rightfully.
From Judaism to Buddhism to Islam, we learn that women are pillars of faith. In the Jewish faith, women are cantors, they are teachers, and even rabbis. From Gelkensing Norbu, we learn that in Buddhism there is even Tara, the female bodhisattva, who helped others realize that women were to be respected. The respect and admiration for women does not end with Judaism or Buddhism, but also shows up as a common thread in Islam, where the women are seen as caretakers and the pillars of the faith.